go to part two now. We'll let the audience ask some of the questions. I'll lead with the first one. One of my former colleagues I worked with, Bobby Coomer, had a question he wanted to ask. I'll direct it to Jim Hicks first and then let any second person jump in. For all of these questions, we'll try to have two panelists answer. Any two can volunteer. We'll try to get maybe 3 or 4 questions and then go to the next section. So, Coomer, if you can unmute yourself, say where you are, who you are, where you're from, and then ask your question.
Hold on, Brian. I'm not as good as you are, man. I'm not good on this Zoom thing.
You weren't saying it back in the day when I worked with you at Lamar.
You used to carry me, man. My technology guy used to get me straight. Help me out with Twitter. We've been talking for a bunch. I'm Bobby Coomer. I'm at Mercer University. And me and Brian have been kind of texting back and forth with some different things that we saw. And I've had an opportunity to work for 17 years for a black head coach. And I worked 5 years with Brian, 5 years with Tick Price at Lamar when me and Brian worked together. I worked for Melvin Watkins for 8 years, and then I worked for Jason Capel for 4 years. And so I've seen a lot of different things that I didn't agree with. And so it kind of made me a little self-aware of certain situations that I wasn't really proud of that other people did. And so I relied on Brian. I relied on Justin Bailey. I relied on Brian Chappelle a lot, especially at Lamar. And I guess my biggest question I was always asked these guys is like, we're working for a black head coach. Why are some of the guys in the industry, why would they not want to help Tick Price? Why did they not want to help Melvin Watkins? Because these were great dudes. I mean, really, really good dudes and really good situations in their conference. And it was frustrating for me at times, and I would always come back to them and be like, I just don't get this. I don't get why these guys don't want to help. These are really good men that we want to be successful, that I'm learning a lot from. And I guess that sometimes it bothered me because I would pick my battles at times with different people, white people. And it was wrong with some of their behavior and some of their actions. And, we talked about that ourselves as a staff. But and me and Brian talked about it earlier tonight, is I don't always see color. And that's something I need to be better about because I didn't realize that because with the way I grew up, everybody was the same. I grew up in Michigan. It was, there's a fast story, Brian, because I'm going to get a thumbs up from you. I know that. This is a very true story. When I was in 2nd grade, my best friend's name was Kevin. I mean, we were friends. We were tight as you could possibly imagine. And I got invited to his birthday party. And all Kevin wanted to do was play hockey, and all I wanted to do was play basketball. And so my dad took me to the birthday party. Well, Kevin was black. And I never said that. That was my friend. And so our dads met for the first time, and they thought that was the funniest thing ever, that Kevin played hockey and he was a black guy, and I'm a white guy that wanted to play basketball, and that we were best friends. And it was one of those things. So learning this is very helpful for me because I'm learning more things that I didn't realize that actually was out there because I don't see it that way. But that's my naivety that I need to be better at. So and it's a long question. I'm sorry, Brian.
No, you're good. Hicks, if you don't mind answering, and if anybody else wants to answer as well, and then we'll go to the next question.
Now, represent the question again, Brian.
Coach Coomer, what's the actual question that you want him to answer?
I guess why we dealt with some things that we didn't think we would have to deal with people wanting to help Tick and wanting to help Melvin. They didn't. I don't understand that. It seemed like it was an uphill battle, even though that they were a black head coach. That certain guys on the panel didn't really want to be involved with helping those guys be successful because they deserve to get some help because they're good coaches. They're good men. They're great mentors.
And so you mean the help from the community, or help from coaches, or help from the grassroots?
I think from Jimmy, you know me. I think from both. I think from both. I think certain guys just kind of overlooked them. That hey, we'd rather send them to a different school in our conference, and we were always like, why? Why would you do that, man? I mean, Melvin is, and I'm sorry, Tick was a great dude, man. He's a father figure, but they would prefer to send him to different guys in the conference, or not necessarily like, hey, it's down to you three. There was like, hey, we wouldn't even consider you. We're thinking about these other schools in your conference instead, and wouldn't give them a chance. I guess that was the more frustrating thing, when they didn't get a chance. When I worked with Melvin at A&M, and it was between us and Texas, and they weren't even considering us. It was about Texas, and I was like, why? I mean, this is a good man.
Well, I definitely feel and understand, when it comes to a lot of the grassroots community, and that's where the most, and the persons of influence. That's how I would identify it, as far as them being able to help Black head coaches. Well, it's just not a Tick Price thing. That type of thing happens all over the country, and it's rooted in something that Big E mentioned earlier when he mentions that why do we hate each other, and the hate is expressed in people's actions. Hell, just look last year. Remember, in life, there's an old adage from an economics on Wall Street where people is buy the rumor, sell the fact. And you think about a year ago where Juwan Howard was named the head coach at Michigan. And as much, think about the Fab Five was, you probably sense, it's gonna be on and popping. Michigan, everybody's about to go to Michigan. And sure enough, you start looking around, just Michigan State just got two top shelf recruits in the past month. Okay, the year before that, Penny Hardaway gets the job at Memphis. Now, Penny ends up getting a couple of prospects. Yes, he does. But pre-existing relationships is what those were, most of those were with other pre-existing relationships. Now, my point is, in life, that's one of the things that I always say. There are so many things about Black people that even Black people don't understand. And a lot of times it appears like that white people think they know, although in many cases you may know the Black person, but you may not understand the Black person. And the understanding of that person is essential. And that's the key, the root. You can know, remember, you think about how many times any of you guys have all probably said, man, I've known this guy all my life. I grew up with this. I've been knowing him since. Okay, yeah, but do you understand him? Well, then first thing come out, what do you mean? Well, understanding. That means have you conversed or conversated about things what do you know about him? That gives you a reason or a definition to understand it. Now back regarding to coaches and helping them, I really believe that it's a small window with coaches. When you get a job, you and those relationships, a lot of head coaches are going to hire a staff that's going to go and get some things done and get some prospects. That's the window that's open. Now, once you get that first wave of prospects, you got to win. And if you're a Black head coach, you got to win and win again. So then that window starts to shrink, because now you aren't as sexy. Your program that is on this isn't as sexy anymore. That's why winning is so important. It's very important. And as a result, I mentioned somebody like, I mentioned Kevin Sampson earlier. You see, when you're winning, things open up. It becomes cool to wear your college shirt around your hometown again. And so a lot of coaches are right there. And the relationships, the thing is, that same relationship that a grassroots coach may have with one college coach, he's not the only college coach that grassroots has a relationship with. So those guys are going to help various, like Dylan Cards. It's going to come, but once again, that's why it's so important. And I understand, I feel the pain, and I really do. But we can do better in that. But it takes a galvanizing effort of and patience, because everybody that's a lot of people in grassroots feel like if they play or go to a certain school, no, not many want to take the time out or have the kids and the families to understand you might have to wait your turn. You might have to earn something. For the first time in your life, you might have to ride the bench. The first time in your life, it may not be given to you. And that's and this comes collectively. And that's a great question. And Bobby, like I say, I really do understand. And I think that as we become consciously aware, then we all can do better towards helping others, and not just on the pretense of them helping you back in return.
I agree with you.
Alan Branch, I know you wanted to answer that question as well, and then we'll go to the next question. Thank you, Jimmy, for that answer.
I think the time window that Jimmy is speaking of is definitely go along. But I think it runs a little bit deeper. I mean, that's the obvious surface part of it. I think what white America has portrayed on us as blacks, it kind of goes back to what Marlon was saying, white man's ice is cola. And it goes all the way back to William Lynch. Go do your research. And what was brought about to indoctrinate our culture with a fear of trusting another black man and making us feel that we were more in competition with one another, that there was such a small sliver of pot available for a black man. White America was able to make black America believe, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, that it is 100% pot is 99, 97% of this pie is for white America, 3% of this pie is for black America. So there tends to be a lack of confidence in the product of what we have the ability to deliver. So when you start talking about what Bobby's talking about there, trusting a black coach to be able to do a good job and for a prospect or a player to be able to have a good experience there, you sometimes are afraid, or we want to help a brother, a black guy, but you're afraid he's not going to really get a fair chance, so you feel like your kid may suffer if he's put in that situation. Like Jimmy's talking about this short window of time. He talked about Juwan. He talked about Penny over in Memphis over there. Bobby started the situation talking about, and all these guys he's talking about, 3 of them I know intimately, very well. And what happens, I see Coach Barnes is on tonight, a black head coach that I know well. The fear is that you don't know if that black head coach is really going to get a fair chance or not. So you're intimidated by, is it the best thing to do for the kid, or because he may not get as open of a chance. And that's probably a pretty wide open statement, but I think I can validate that statement. And I think there are even other people here on this line that know where I'm coming from. That's it, Brian.
Thank you, Alan Branch, very much. Adam, we'll go to you, and I know some people have been messaging you. If there's somebody that had a question that you thought was good that you want to offer to the group, please call on them, and then any 2 panelists can answer. So if you feel like you have an answer for that question, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay, first of all, before we get to these questions, I got bounced out of here for like a couple minutes, and I lost my chat. So for everybody who had sent me a private message with their question, please resend it because I lost it. We did have one from Roderick Ward, but I don't think it's in here any longer. But his question was, how can coaches lead by example, specifically within their community and with local law enforcement and with local government? And I guess that's for any two panelists that want to take a stab at it. Coach Pete, I'm going to ask Coach Pete to speak on this too. Somebody else, I think someone was about to talk.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was how as coaches, how can coaches lead by example in their, like specifically in their community with local law enforcement and local government?
Can I get on that, Adam, if you don't mind?
For sure.
Again, Coach Fitzgerald from Hines Community College. And Adam, I love the question. I think where I stand with it is in your communities, there are apartment complexes, there are low-income housing, there's some poverty-stricken people. Show your face. Do a free clinic, not just for basketball. Do an education clinic. Do something different that you can open up avenues for the younger folks that don't see what we see on our side, Adam. Like a lot of times we get to this point and get where we came from or who we've left behind. We see the guys that we're recruiting, of course that's what we're looking at, but we have to look deeper and say, okay, that kid that came to me with single parent home, struggling with the anger that Coach Irvin was talking about earlier, I was one of those angry kids, and that's what messed me up with basketball. So we have to reach back to that level of it and not just the surface level where we're getting those guys. It's sort of like that iceberg on top of the water and what lies up under that waterline. Well, what's up under that waterline is a kid that started off at 0 age and he's now 19. How do we get to the bottom of how do we make that change from when they're 6, 7, 8 years old instead of trying to do it at 18, 19 when we've lost so many of them already by that time? With your local law enforcement, I can't say because it's going to be different for different communities. So, Adam, I hate to not have an answer for that because I don't want to speak for other communities because it's different for everybody and where they are. So that part of the question I wanted to just answer. That was cool.
Yeah, Pete, great job, Youssef. Pete, why don't you go next?
Well, I've said this before, and I think I've tweeted about it as well. Every head basketball coach can get a level appropriate meeting with an elected official. If you're a high school head coach, your city council person is going to meet with you. If you're a D3 head coach, maybe a state rep or a state senator. If you're a small D1 head coach, your congressperson will take a meeting with you. And if you're a big D1 head coach, you can meet with the governor or with the senator. And so if you educate yourself on there's a massive volume of policy solutions that go way beyond police brutality into banking, employment, housing, you name it. And if you educate yourself on that, again, there's a huge volume. And a lot of it, I say it's a huge volume, I don't mean it's one 1,000-page document that's overbearing. I mean, there's hundreds of websites with very simple bullet points. And read up and educate yourself. And if there are solutions that make sense, request a meeting with your elected official and say, hey, here are some things that I'd like to get done. Or you can meet with your team and come to some level of consensus and then present that. But literally every head basketball coach in America can get a level appropriate meeting with an elected official to push any agenda that makes sense to you. And I strongly encourage you guys to do that.
Great stuff, Pete. Anyone else?
Marlon, did you have something? We'll take one more if you want to say something. Marlon, you good? Okay. What you got next, John? Adam, what do you have next? Sorry.
Oh, no problem. We got a question here from Nathan Purvis. Go ahead, Nathan. Introduce yourself and ask.
Yeah, my name is Nathan Purvis. I'm at Mansfield Summit High School. I am obviously a white male and I work with primarily young black men. And my question is, how do I break through to these young men? I think they know that I love them as people, but I want to get past that and do more and try to reach them on a deeper level to get them to talk about the difficult things that may be going on in their life that they aren't wanting to share necessarily with any coach, and particularly the white guy that's on the coach's staff. So.
Well, I think you have to be able to recognize color So when you recognize color, you get a chance to know who each individual's, what relates to them. What happened, why they got to be home at a certain time, what happens if they're driving the car with certain people. That's important to know who they are and their background. When you understand their background and the social economic things that they go through, now it's a whole lot easier to relate to them. And it's not always about questioning their behavior, but sometimes you have to talk to them and ask them questions, which allows them to give you the answer instead of assuming that you know the answer yourself. So when you ask a certain question like, hey, tell me why you did that. And they're going to tell you why they did it from their living perspective. Now, it may not be the norm that the world looks at, but or the way that you look at it, their lifestyle and their living pattern gives them a different perspective and a different view on things. And so therefore, we go about things a different way sometimes because of our circumstances or the environment that we live in. So I think a lot of times what you want to do is, and what we all should do is, when children or kids do certain things, or even each other do things that we might question and wonder why or how can we help, ask questions. Therefore, you get a chance. They'll give you more answers than you really recognize a lot of times. So I think that's one way to start out, if that makes sense.
Hey, I think that one of the things that I do a pretty good job of with my kids, and it doesn't matter that I'm Black. I think you could do this as a white coach or Black coach. It doesn't matter. Every day, I'll walk up to my kids or my players, and I shake their hand, I dap them up, and I say, what's up? I talk to them about things that are non-basketball stuff. I find out what's going on in their lives. Like I got a young man that's coming up here this year. He just had a baby. He's 17 years old. He's coming to play for us next year, and he's just had a baby. Every time I talk to him, I ask him about the baby. Every time I talk to him, I ask him about his relationship with the grandparents, because sometimes they have problems. So when you start letting them know that you care about more than just what they can do for you on the court, it becomes a whole lot easier to have those conversations. And then you'll start seeing them gravitating to you and talking to you about those kind of things. So again, I understand that you're a white coach, but I think this is with any coach. You have to take the time out to know each of your players. And that's the thing that I think where I've been able to do a really good job with players is that I find out what's going on with them beyond the basketball. And I make sure I'm always checking in with that stuff. So then now they say, well, he care about me more than just what I can do for him on the court. He care about me as a person, as a player, and then he does as a player. And once you get that kind of rapport with them, they start to come around more. And then what you'll find out is the other players see it, and then they'll start coming around.
Can I jump in on this one? Charles Ament, Langham Creek High School, Houston, Texas. I think one of the things, very much like you, we are at a school that's population is incredibly diverse, and I think one of the things that has really solidified a lot of the things in our basketball program and just in the community in general, and the feedback that I get. Regardless of what they look like. And then when you pour into them through other ways, says it's unstable. There we go. I think that there has to be like an intentional leadership in your program. We do it once a week during the season. Sometimes more than that, we call it a Mentality Monday or Wisdom Wednesday. But it's just an intentional time to talk about all different types of things. And I think that's one of the best things you can do because you have a platform of a leadership as a coach, as Pete was saying. And once you do that, some of the ways that and like what Marlon was saying, asking questions like from your perspective and really asking, like giving them the time to be able to answer those questions honestly in a safe space where you're able to address some of the things and you learn some of the things from your kids that you would never know if all you were doing is just working on rebounding or defensive transition or any of the things like that. So if you're not doing something like that in your program, I would really, really encourage you to kind of look and to see and do it in a
I think we may have lost Coach, his connection. But I want to call on Adam Walsh, head coach at a Division III, Shenandoah. Coach, great job. I know you've impacted some other high school coaches who have shared with me that they got that kind of platform following your lead. So keep up the great work. I want to call on Adam Walsh. He was on Coach's Corner not too long ago and shared some things he's doing with his team before we go to the next question.
Thanks, B. Appreciate you guys having me on and jumping into this. This is a great platform, and we really appreciate you guys for doing it. I think, one of the things that we've started with our guys, and Brian, I don't think I even said this to you the last time we talked. We did a program with our women's team back in January while we were on Christmas break and we didn't have school, where we had a professor, communications professor, come in and talk to our teams about how we consume our news and where we get our information from, and like learning how we learn and learning where we get our information from. I thought in an election year that was a big thing for us to start talking about as a program, and we're working on communicating that with our entire athletic department now. Just your news consumption alone, like understanding the innate biases that can be built into that. And I think that's a huge piece for us to be able to communicate with our kids. Obviously, we're going through voter education. I think we got all but one guy that's wrapped up his stuff as far as registering to vote. We are currently in the middle of designing kind of a not just social justice, but really a cultural piece with our guys where the players have an impact on articles we read, books we read, maybe movies or documentaries. We've already watched Just Mercy as a team, had a team discussion on that. Obviously, the team discussions have been pretty deep, and that's been a blessing, I think, in the middle of this. And it's kind of back to what Alan Branch said early, like the pandemic's just different, man. Like everybody's paying attention, and we have this platform right now to really talk about change. And I think it's on us as coaches to keep these conversations going. Obviously, the platform's still here, but I think it's an ongoing piece with our teams, and we have to listen to our guys and adapt to what they need, as this conversation continues to evolve. But the election is a huge deal, and it's not just that it's a presidential election. The local elections are just as important, and I think that's where we got to do a better job as coaches of helping our players understand that.
Yeah, we'll take Adam, if you don't mind, we'll take one more question, then go to part 3 and kind of get to those conversations so we can start wrapping up.
Sure. I'm going to ask this question because I don't have any more in the chat. Again, I lost those, so I apologize if I missed anybody's. But what do we do about people who are so close-minded? Like we just had one in the chat, right? I missed most of it, but apparently he was saying some offensive stuff. He was on here trolling. But what do you do about people like that, of course you want to educate people. You want to try to change their mind. But like when they're so close-minded like that, I mean, do we just hope that they like go away? Or, I mean, like, how do we address that? People that are so stuck in their ways. Like sorry, this is a long question. I watched this video this morning about this guy in Harrison, Arkansas. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it's like supposedly the most racist town in America, headquarters of the KKK. And he held a Black Lives Matter sign up all day and videotaped the reactions. And it's unbelievable. Like, you guys should watch it. It's a quick video, but it's clearly like a learned behavior. And some people are so like, they hold on to that and aren't even open, they're not capable of having that open mind. So what is the strategy there? Or do we just ignore that, try to push them aside, make them in the minority? Just curious, like, to hear some people's thoughts on that.
I'll share. Ted Crash still at Still Ted Grass, still my name. But I'm from Arkansas, and I'm very familiar with Harrison, Arkansas. And, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that's come out of these last couple months is that, that staying quiet and just being neutral isn't enough for white people. And I think in this situation, the one you're referring to, we all watched Coach Pete, who's been a very good example of that, respond to that man or whoever. But that conversation, to me, probably has to happen from white people. That person is so closed-minded and has so much hate in their heart. They're not even going to listen to people of color. And I think that's where we've been challenged over the past couple months to stop being quiet. And I think that the way Coach Pete does it, and I've watched him and I've had conversations with him, is put facts in front of them and put information in front of them. And all you can do is hope they read it. And you can maybe educate yourself a little bit so you can spit it out quickly and they can hear it and they can understand. But they, sometimes they're beyond a point of help. And, we all as coaches know it's really, really hard to help a kid that doesn't want to be helped. But you can plant a seed in their head so that hopefully one day when they are ready to hear it and ready for some help is there. And then hopefully that seed will grow. But, I think that to answer your question, it has to come from us. And that's what we've been challenged to do as white people, is to go have those conversations that suck. They're very uncomfortable. That person's going to get really mad at you, might try to fight you, but you got to be prepared for that. And you have to be educated so that when you talk to them, you're making sense. But it starts with educating ourselves and having weapons like Coach Pete has, and he's sent them to me and prepared me for those conversations with my relatives from Arkansas who are like people you're referring to in Harrison, and me as their family member. They're going to love me regardless. So I'm in a great position this is what you need to know. I coach these boys every day and they're great people and there's nothing wrong with them. And, they need to understand what white privilege is, and hopefully that seed will grow. But that's it. Appreciate it.
Aaron Smith, you want to jump in on that too? And we'll take a couple more. Go ahead, Nick. We'll get Aaron next.
Okay. I have a different, while this was going on, I sat back and I watched a little bit. I am of the mindset, and this is just me personally, people that are stuck in those ways, I almost appreciate that. I can remember so many times, I've built relationships with people, and then probably at the worst times when I expected a certain message to come out or them to come to the forefront of an issue that I was faced with, that they kind of went left or the other way from everything I thought I had known from the person. My job is just to do the very best I can. If I don't go out of my way to try to prove factual things about, my character, or that all Black people aren't the same way, or that, these things, go a certain way. I think the best thing I can do is just continue to stick to the values and do things in an all-encompassing way. And honestly, when these people take these hardline stances, I'm okay with that. People are never going to see things the same way. And some of it is just their upbringing, and some of it, I have family members that if I'm being completely honest, probably wanted to see me marry somebody that looked like me. But it was the way they were raised. And they've been around my wife, for many years now, and she's part of the family. And that way I can break down, those things that are in front of them, as in trying to, maybe put factual things, because at certain points, some people don't, they don't do the rational thing well. So just that constant proof and that constant example, may do, just as much good or just as much damage in breaking down those stereotypes.
Just real quick, if these conversations are happening online, remember that you're not just talking to the person who made the objectionable remark, but everybody else. And so a lot of times you're not going to move that person one iota, but there are a lot of other people reading you can move. If that's your goal, and like Nick said, you're prepared, you're presenting facts. You may not change the one dude's mind, but there may be other people who are kind of fence sitters who are like, oh, wow, that makes much more sense than what the raging racist was saying.
Thanks, Pete. Go ahead, Aaron. We'll do that, and then we'll go to part 3. Thanks.
I just think it, similar to some of the things that, were said earlier when we're talking about, young black men asking questions. I think in any conversation, it's important to ask these questions, and especially when you're dealing with people that just have so much, hate in their heart and are just ignorant of so many things. Having a list of questions that, where you can kind of be pointed and direct the conversation, but one, like, why are you so angry, you know what I mean, and listen to those responses, and also, like, a lot of times with these people, they feel that racism stopped after the civil rights movement, right? And so they, like, why, when do you think racism stopped being a big issue? And they answer those questions, and that can be a gateway to opening their eyes to understanding what's even happened since the 1980s, whether we're talking about housing segregation or, the war on drugs, mass incarceration, redlining, whatever it is, really being able to take the conversation to a place by asking them questions and helping them to share their viewpoint, because a lot of times with this, like, people are just ignorant and they can't even like espouse their viewpoint, other than they're angry that somebody thinks that they have privilege or whatever it may be. And so I think asking questions and allowing those questions to kind of get to deeper issues, I think, is a big thing.
Yeah, awesome stuff, fellas. We're going to move to part 3, keep the program moving. We'll go straight to Hank and Coach Davis. Paired conversations. Hank, we'll let you ask your question to Coach Davis first. So part 3 will just be where we'll have 7 different pairings of one white basketball leader and one black. And they will both ask each other a question. They'll both answer. And we'll get to watch that conversation. And then we'll move to the next group. So, Hank, go ahead and ask Coach Davis your question first.
All right. Sounds good. I didn't know I was going to actually have to ask. So give me 1 second.
No, that's all right. I got it. You did your homework. You turned it in.
Okay. In your experience communicating with white college coaches at all different levels, what is one thing that white coaches have done or said that make you feel they would not be good mentors for your kids? On the other hand, what is something white coaches have done to make you believe that they would be a good mentor for one of your players?
I think one thing that white coaches I've dealt with in particular that made me feel they wouldn't be a good mentor for my player was I had a player come in. He was going to be a freshman, the same as another kid that was going to be a freshman. They were going to be playing the same position. And the first thing that he mentioned to me is that it was going to be a fair battle, and he didn't see any color. And I think just by him saying that, he established himself as a liar to me, because I mean, for him to say that, he saw color right there from the beginning. So that right there just already, and it ended up being a bad omen. And I didn't want the kid to end up going there, but the kid ended up, that was his decision, and he did it anyway. But I knew from right then that wasn't a person I wanted my kid to play for, because for you to mention that on our first encounter with each other, and there was also some other things that he did that I just don't really want to go into depth with. I just don't think he's good. He went only good for my kid. I don't think he's good for young black men. One thing the coach did that I really, really feel like he really was a good coach is when he came in, he really got to know the kid that I had in particular. And I know we said stuff, the ball is going to start bouncing and all that, and I definitely agree with that. It is going to stop bouncing. Even those guys in the NBA, hopefully they're going to live a lot more of their life outside of the NBA. That's not even going to be a third of their life, hopefully. But this coach got it. He knew with this kid in particular, did his research on him and knew that, this kid didn't have a plan B. He needed to make this plan A work. And there were several reasons for that, and I'm not going to go into depth for that, but for him to take that approach and the love and the time that he shared with that kid, and it didn't work. It ended up not working. But if I had a chance to send my kid to that same coach again, I would, because I knew he did everything in his power not to give up on that kid, and wasn't really worried about the administration and different people like that saying that, hey, you need to wash your hands of them. He wasn't worried about that because I think he felt that he had enough self-confidence in himself that whatever somebody else said, it didn't matter. He was going to do whatever he had to do to help that kid, in spite of even some people, maybe even on his own staff, wanted him to give up on the kid. So that's one of my that's a couple of my experiences dealing with it.
Sound good. Appreciate it.
It's time for me to have my question now, right?
Yep.
Is that right, Bird?
Yeah.
Yep. You're up next.
Appreciate that, fellas. Appreciate that. Hold on right there, Coach Hank. I'm finna get it to you right in just a second. Right in a second.
Yeah, Biggie.
All right, here you go, Coach. This is what I got for you.
Yeah.
It's kind of a two-parter, so I'm gonna read it real slowly, but make sure you get it all. I said, why do you feel as recently as 2005 that over 32% of the head coaches were black at the 6 major conferences, and now at our Power 5 conferences here in 2020, we're down to a little over 13%. I feel with us having such a huge pool of assistant coaches to choose from, why are we not getting a chance to be head coaches in the quote-unquote good jobs if we are qualified? Do you personally feel that presidents and ADs feel that they're appeasing us due to 59% of the assistants are black at these high major programs? And also, do you feel that we are just pretty much looked at as recruiters or babysitters to roughly around the 80% of major college black scholarship players at these universities? And then the last part of that, and if I have to repeat, I will. More importantly, I want you to tell me, what do you think I could do as an influential grassroots coach in my region to influence change, in your opinion?
I will. I'll try to answer it the best I can. As I think, as Alan Branch said earlier, I know Coach Rod Barnes is on here. He probably, he probably would have a better answer for as far as black coaches being head coaches at the highest level. Obviously, his experience is extreme, but I'll give it a shot. I mean, I kind of looked into some stuff today, and you mentioned 2005, and so I kind of tried to find what I could on the internet as far as the stats and stuff, and it looked to me from what I could find that it looked like there were a larger percentage. That number you gave, that sounds about right. But when I was surprised when coaching in the changes in 2005, of the 34 guys I could see were hired, 26 were white and 8 were black. This past in 2019, so not counting this year, so a year ago, there were 58 coaching changes. 43 white guys were hired. 15 head coaches were black. So I think regardless, I think there's clearly an issue here. There's clearly black coaches are not getting the same look. They're not getting the same consideration. And that's obviously been a trend throughout the last 15 years. I kind of went back just the last 5 years. In 2016, 35 white guys hired, 19 black guys. In 2017, 32 white coaches, 19 black coaches. 2018, 28 white coaches, 26 black coaches. So that was as close as it looked like it got. And then these last 2 years, it's 43 white coaches, 15 black coaches. In 2020, 16 white coaches, 8 black coaches. So it almost seems like the last 2 years there's been a sharp shift. And I guess I have a tough time believing that maybe the world we're in hasn't influenced that a little bit. I mean, I don't have any kind of, I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I would guess that maybe in these last 2 years, there's always been an issue, but it looked to me, and the numbers they lie too much, I don't think, is that in the last 2 years, maybe the combination, we all know, the white presidents that hire the white athletic directors, that now hire search firms that are led by white guys, that are influenced by white agents, and now all of a sudden, maybe in this world that's kind of become a little more, all of a sudden the people that, that all of a sudden we've kind of taken a sharp turn back, and all of a sudden people are more comfortable to ignore trying to give black coaches an opportunity, and maybe those different groups that are led by white coaches are getting, and no doubt, I think the influence of white boosters, I think, is absolutely an issue. And I guess as you look at just the highest level schools, it's I think you read the number. I can't remember what it is. 13% of high major coaches are black,
Yeah.
and I was looking, and in the just below that, I guess level wise, in the American Conference and the Big East Conference, it seems to be closer to 50-50. And I was trying to think about why. And if you take the Big East, that's a lot of private city schools, Catholic schools, private schools. The Power Five, I mean, these are University of blank and usually followed by a state, and, so why in the universities that represent the whole states, why are 13% of head coaches black? And I just think, you add up all the white boosters that support, they usually support those biggest schools, and they influence white presidents, and who hire some search firm to get the white AD, and they kind of, they have to funnel that money back to the search firm to then get the coach. So I just think I guess the word systemic probably sums that up. But it seems to me that there's been a shift back, at the highest level, in a direction where white coaches clearly have an advantage. So I guess I was looking at all that, and it was, it's pretty obvious. If somebody doesn't think that white coaches have an advantage of getting a head coaching job, I mean, they're incorrect. If somebody doesn't think that white coaches have an advantage of getting a high major head coaching job, they're incorrect. There's built-in issues here that are preventing black coaches from getting the same opportunities. How do we fix it? What can you do as a grassroots coach? What can I do as a junior college coach? I don't have the rock solid answer. I guess the biggest thing that as I was looking at who these schools are hiring, and again, sorry if I'm going on long here, Brian, but I'll try to wrap it up. Like there's a lot of high major black assistant coaches. I think 60%, something along those lines. And at the highest level, in the last 10 years, 7 high major assistants have gotten high major jobs, and 3 of them are from Duke. One's from Kentucky. Mike Hopkins went from Syracuse to Washington. Dave Lato, who had been there, went from Tulsa to DePaul, and Rick Ray went from Clemson to Mississippi State, and then Jeff Capel from Duke, Steve Wojciechowski, Chris Collins, so there's not a lot of high major assistants, regardless of any color, getting straight high major jobs. In 2019, half of the guys that already been they got hired as head coaches had already been a Division I head coach. So I think that black coaches need to, and no doubt there's a huge disadvantage and it's an uphill battle, but I think that the way to become a head coach at the highest level is to get head coaching experience, and obviously a lot of us that are on this panel, junior college coaches, grassroots coaches, we're coaching basketball. And a lot of high major assistants, both white and black, have not been head coaches before. And I do think that, whether it's the search firms or the ADs or the presidents, I think maybe it sure looks to me like they're looking for head coaching experience, because that covers their ass, I think. It's, if you hire a guy that's never been a head coach and he bellies up, well, I mean, you kind of went out on a limb. If you hire a guy that's been a head coach before, it's kind of safe. Oh, that didn't work out. Well, how would I know? So I guess I think, when jobs come open, I think assistant coaches, mid-major assistants, high major assistants, I think getting some experience, like I think a lot of us here are head coaches. We know that it's pretty cool, like you get to coach basketball, I don't know if, I went to school at Providence and I was a GA there. So that was 11, 12 years ago. I don't know at the highest level if black assistants are considered babysitters and recruiters. I don't know. I think that's unfortunate.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with everything you're saying as far as, the spirit and all that, but I just really think, and I believe totally that just like with the, there's a whole different deal with the black quarterback. I just think people don't give us enough credit for knowing how to lead, how to coach, how to be intelligent. And I think those are the factors that need to be realized by everybody. I mean, it's not just about experience. It's about we're not giving credit for being intelligent individuals that can lead, that can be the leaders of programs and be the leaders of teams. And I mean, we can be right there to help get the kids. We can work them out, do all that type of stuff. But why we can't lead? 80% of them are black. I mean, why we can't lead those kids? Those are kids. We have kids in our households that are like those kids. And that's just my opinion on that, and I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, I think that's extremely unfortunate, if true. And I'm not telling you I disagree with that. I think I disagree that that's the case. I do think there's a lot of people in those positions of powers that probably. I think you're right. I think they do think that, and I don't know how we.
I mean, we just got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable questions, uncomfortable situations, and it just is what it is.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the answer is. I think that coaching, leading. I agree. Leading. I think it's so rewarding. And I think that black coaches. I guess we all try to find those opportunities. And I do think that one of the issues, one of the things about your question that stood out to me was 2005 to now. One of the crazy things that obviously has changed is assistant coaches make so much money. So like our assistant coaches getting paid so much money to, as you said, just appease it, to be happy in that role.
Well, because that's the deal, you'll give one of our coaches, $450, $500 to do a bit of high major, but then the job that you want to give them will be a head coaching job. That'll be a crummy job. That'll pay him $150,000 to $200,000. You try. He has a family. How is he going to take that? So, it's a lot of reasons, I guess. And I guess it can't be answered easily.
Yeah. No, I agree, and because of that, it kind of limits the jobs that somebody making $450,000 would
exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
No, great job, fellas. I know we can have this conversation and keep going. Hank, I appreciate you even at point saying you don't know, because I think that's an honest part of this conversation. But the question need to be asked. So great job on both sides. We will go to Coach Stafford and Coach Dewey. I believe you guys are up next. Coach Stafford, I'll let you ask first.
All right. Question is, since you are in a rural area and the minority population is low, how or what do you say or do to educate your African-American players to be safe while trying to encourage them to be positive people in the community? And how do you address with your players their feelings about some of the police brutality that's happened, has been experienced between African Americans and Caucasian police officers?
I think I don't know what it's like to be black, obviously. So I got to have that conversation with my black players. What are some things that you've dealt with in your life? Being in the community, going out, all that. Because where I am at Garden City, Kansas, the population's 50-50. White and Hispanic. So they're the extreme minority here. So wherever they go, just like at a lot of junior colleges, people know that they're athletes at the college and they're under a microscope. And, I think we all have this conversation with our players from day one, and we have to make them understand that to the best that we can. I'm big on getting out in the community. I'm big on doing as much in the community as I can with these kids, because I think it helps them grow more than almost anything, helping young kids, whatever it may be that we do. So I want to do that as much as I can, but at the same time, like you said, how do I help these black kids be safe in the community? It's tough because I don't know what it's like. So the rest of your question with the police brutality, I've thought about that, and we had a head coaches meeting last week, and the chief of police in the town spoke with us, and I talked to him afterwards, and I just said, hey, do you think you could come and talk to our team individually? And he was welcoming that, and I think that's going to be huge for our players for their first. He's campus police as well. So anything that happens on campus, he's going to be the first one there. So if they get in trouble, he's going to be there. And I want their first experience with him to be a good experience and an open experience and an honest experience, to where he can talk to them. They can ask them questions that's on their mind, because I think that's huge. A lot of these kids, they're seeing all this stuff happen, and social media is just controlling their minds, and they got a lot on their mind that they want to ask. And I want their first experience with that police officer to be a good experience. So that if they do happen to get in trouble and he's, having to put the law down on them, they already know who he is. He already knows who they are. And they have that, somewhat of a relationship already to where they're not completely combative from the jump. And I think that's something that I'm definitely going to do here at Garden City for that first week. I'm going to try immediately to get them one-on-one with the chief of police on campus so that they can have that relationship already. I hope that answers your question, Coach.
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. Thanks.
My question to you, this is a tough one, I know, man, but it's been on my mind, and I wanted to see, someone else's perspective. My question was, how do we support our players if they want to take a knee during the anthem in a small rural junior college town that we're in that may not understand or accept the meaning behind taking a knee?
I think the first thing is to have an open conversation with the players and find out what their real thoughts are about it. That's my first thing. The second thing is getting them out in the community and getting out to the community and talking to them about some of these issues. I'm in a unique situation that Coach Gillespie has done such a good job here before I took over. We have a radio show. And there's opportunities to kind of, meet and greet and get out in front of the community. And because I've been here for 3 years, I know a lot of the community. So, that's a piece of it will be part of me trying to educate the community about that, but also doing things like when the national anthem was getting ready to be played, maybe get our announcer to speak something, make a small statement about it, maybe to put something in our media guide or our for the day, whatever our media is for the day, for the game. Put something in there, a little blurb about that, then they say something about it. So now people aren't as offended by it. I think that just like when the thing with Colin Kaepernick happened, I don't think people really understood what he was trying to say. I don't think people really understood. Now they do. They have a better understanding of it. But again, it's because they've been educated to it now. They've been given information about it. So the biggest thing is just getting that information out to people and also making sure that our kids are in the community. So now when they do something like that, the hope is that they've been entrenched into the community enough that the people will support what they are trying to do and what they're trying to say and making sure that they understand that their voice is being heard, and that's a positive way for them to be expressing themselves as opposed to doing it in a negative way. So,
love it.
Great job on both sides, man. Appreciate those answers. Let's go Yusef and Ted next. Excuse me, Tom, I'm sorry. Yusef and Tom. Sorry, Yusef and Tom. Yusef.
Hi, Big Tom. I'll shoot this question at you, Tom. If you don't mind, I'll go first, bro. Do you believe there's a discrepancy in opportunities for minorities? If so, what have you done in the past, and what steps will you do in the future to assist with providing those opportunities? If you don't feel there are discrepancies, please explain why you feel this way. And then the second part, what are some ways that we can help our former players with success after basketball, after they finish their 4-year pro level? What are we doing to transition our guys into the real world?
Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think we've gone over as a whole just the discrepancies within our industry. And so I'm going to kind of, and I had all the same numbers that everyone else had, but I think when we look at it, our industry is very small compared to so many other industries. And I think minorities are misrepresented in a lot of them. And there is a huge discrepancy to have those opportunities. And so, one thing that I think is really important, and we briefly talked about, is holding our, our campuses or wherever we work accountable in terms of the composition and the makeup of their staff and faculty. And I got that from an article about Carnegie Mellon University, and that's one of their 34 different initiatives and action items that they're going to do to take an anti-racist stance. And they're putting it in the public's eye to where this is our staff. This is who makes up our professors. This is who makes up our deans. This is who makes up our athletic staff. And I think that's really, really important. In terms of what I've done and what we'll continue to do at our school, I'm different. Like, I've been at some junior colleges that are small towns in rural Wyoming. I'm in a little bit different situation now. I'm in Florida, and Bradenton's, right in between Tampa and Sarasota. And so I have access to a large community with people on all different spectrums and where they fall on these issues. And one thing I think is important, because our team's so small compared to the entire community, is we developed an Expanding Our Boundaries task force. And what we did is we partnered with local leaders in our community, people on the school board, teachers of the year in the state of Florida, people with the technical college background that are really high up in one of our big technical schools. And what we're doing is trying to navigate our community and really learn, why do some young people and especially young minorities feel that college isn't a route for them? Because I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it. And a lot of the stuff that deals with race, it is about the system. It is about the criminal justice system. It is about a lot of these young men don't grow up with a father figure or raised by a grandparent. And I think there's things that we can do in terms of community outreach. There's things that we can do in terms of mentoring programs that can help bridge that gap. One thing that we've done is we've partnered with local employers, specifically fast food restaurants, because a lot of those restaurants actually make up a large group that are college age or about to go into college, and they're very loyal to their first job. So if they work at Taco Bell, they might work there for 3-4 years, and they might say, and they might have to work, and they might have to work to be able to help pay the bills at home. And so they feel like they have to choose between, I either work or I go to school, and you know, maybe things happen because from a family standpoint after that. And so we partnered with them to try to help managers understand a flexible schedule, encourage their employers to go to college, and that they can still have a job, as well as maybe move into a better position over that time. And as far as what do we do when our guys are done playing, whether that's at their 4-year school or professionally, you know, everyone preaches relationships, but how many of us have a relationship with our students when they're not playing for us? Because as some of us that have played, we know when that ball stops bouncing, like, there's a lot of stuff to figure out. And I'm fortunate. I knew I always wanted to coach. I knew the moment I stopped playing, I was going to coach. But I'm big on passion. And if you're passionate about, like you said, driving a truck, drive a truck. If that's what's going to make you happy and you love to do it and it can support you and your family, then drive a truck. And it's really important that we're there for our student athletes far beyond their time with us, because that's when they're going to need us the most. So shoot, I have an open house policy, man. If I have a former player that needs to get on their feet, if I have someone that wants to get into coaching, I'm able to put them on a platform to where they can do it and not get paid very much money and still eat everything in my fridge and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of things, but how well our relationships go beyond the time that they spend with us and when they do stop playing. All right, I got you. Okay, so mine's pretty straightforward. You know, we've had multiple conversations with student athletes at our school, both with our team, but also from a department wide. And you know, it's really evident that a lot of these young people have the idea that things are not going to change, and that there's nothing that we can do for it to change. How would you respond to a student athlete or anybody that says things are not going to change?
Well, first of all, that's a great, hell of a question and great answer from mine. T-Fox, I've been respecting what you're doing over there at SCF, and I was across the street at IMG for some years, so I know what you've done with that program, and I appreciate it. For me, that's a defeatist mentality that has warped our people for generations. The most profound 3 words in that statement that you sent to me was what we do. I think those words exemplify like what we need out here in this world. So people who have ideas, your positive thinkers, your vessels of hope, if you're a person that really believes in wanting equality, you have to bring something to the table. You have to do something. Some are protesting, some are marching, others are suggesting laws of systemic change. But the place that it really starts, though, is within yourself, man. Like, there's so many times that we don't realize some of us are all racist in a sense. And we have to look into ourselves and dispel that whole how you think. So, you know, if we all take some action, whether it's creating opportunities for others that are a different race, whether it's, you know, passing along knowledge and advancement and progress, whether it's giving back to those who come next. I mean, just something that, you know, you're giving back. So too many times we take that easy road out, T. And like, for us, it's like, you know, we would sit back and allow others to mistreat one set of people because, hey, nothing's going to change. But just remember, you will have children coming through like I have now, and you will wish you fought for change. Because now I look at it, I'm 43, and I didn't do a lot when I was younger because I was doing different things and I didn't see it the same way. And being in Mississippi, you know, you're taught to, hey, put your head down and just stay out the way. Just make it to the courtroom if you get in any trouble. So I think, you know, for us, we just can't sit back and allow our children to go through the same thing, because their children, they're going to have children. And so, like, you're going to wish you fought for change, especially if it's somebody that's affected close to you. Now it hits home and you're saying, oh, shucks, I should have done this, or I should have tried this. But it's too late, because now it's your brother, your sister, your cousin, your son, or your daughter. You're in trouble. Maybe your mother or your father. Now it hits home to where now you're saying, oh, it affected me, so now I want to make change. No, it should have been some change that started within you when you knew from the beginning that it was wrong, and you should have spoke out then instead of waiting until later on when this stuff affects you, and you're trying to pick up the pieces in patchwork. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, like they've always told me. It ain't gonna work. You know what I mean? You're gonna have to keep replacing that Band-Aid over and over, but there's nothing gonna change. So I think, you know, whether right or wrong, be a vessel for change. Like, at the end of the day, you see wrong, say something. Like, it's not bad to point out. We do it in our players all the time. Like, we see our guys doing something, hey, Joe Blow, chill out now, that's not gonna work for you. You're gonna end up back at the crib. But it's like, instead of just that part of it, man, step in at the house. Like, if it's within your home, man, check them people. Like, it is what it is. Like, the uncomfortable part of checking somebody is the response. Like, you worried about what they might hit you back with instead of saying, you know what, I don't care what comes back. I'm going to say what I feel like saying. And that's been my motto. I'm going to say it. You got to go to sleep with that, because at the end of the day, you know I'm right. You got to wrestle at night and not get some sleep and some winks because you know you was some dead wrong bull crap that you said out there. So I think that's where it is. And it's not okay. It's not cool. So at the end of the day, like, don't just, oh, I saw it, but I ain't going to say nothing. That's not cool, bro. Like, you got to speak up and you have to say something. That goes for everybody on the panel, every kid you come into contact with, your leaders and your communities. I love what you guys are doing, T-Park down there at SCF, with including the teachers and everything, and encouraging guys to, hey, forget the ball. Be a teacher. Be the teacher of the year. Be something. And that's where it starts, from the house, man. And I think that's best that I could give you. I love the question, though, T-Parks, man. Thank you for everything you're doing down there. I love that spot, bro.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yeah, both Tom and Youssef, sorry for the name confusion for a second. Got Tom and Ted a little close. But great job, great answers, man. Really powerful. Appreciate it. Now we'll go to Ted and Nick, Coach Wade.
I'll ask first. Coach Wade, 2 years ago, you were hired as the head coach at Angelina after serving as an assistant for just 2 years. That avenue is probably one of the most common ways for guys to get their first chance as a college head coach. What did you do during your time as an assistant to put yourself in a position with the administration that they thought you could do the job? What steps did you take after the job opened up to ensure you got the position? And what specific advice would you give to an assistant, especially a young black assistant, to help them be in the position you were in?
Okay.
Coach Wade, if you don't mind me stepping in real quick. So for those that don't know, Coach Wade has been a college and high school coach. He's kind of a part of my family. He went to school with my brother, played college ball with my brother, worked with him in high school. But he didn't have a full-time college coaching job until he became a head coach. He was literally a volunteer or a part-time guy the entire time. And there was a full-time assistant ahead of him before he interviewed for this job. So just to give you context on his background, before he got to that position, he had to be triple and quadruple as good because he wasn't even a full-time employee before he became a head coach. So I know you can touch into that, Coach, but I want to at least give him that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I had never been paid. I was a volunteer assistant for 3 years at Lee College, working for nothing, and like for real nothing. While I was trying to obtain a master's degree, I subbed on the side, did whatever I could to keep a roof over my head. When it became very clear that I wasn't going to move up to an assistant role, and if I'm being very frankly, that the staff at that time wasn't going to help me pursue another job, I had to leave. I was very fortunate that Brian's brother took me under his wing. I knew that he had just come from Texas State, and I had a feeling he was going to go back to the college route. So learning from him, aligning with him, and he went back to the college route. That very next year, it was just on the women's side. And so I didn't have any interest in that. So I came home and worked for Neil Laminack at Oak Ridge, who used to work at Memphis for Coach Calipari, just trying to get back in. And I did everything cliche, stood outside of Final Fours, begged people, but just to be very honest about who I am, I just love the game of basketball. I coached AAU out of my pocket just because I wanted to coach. I never had any players. My dad was never a coach in college, anything like that. I am a fanatic of coaching the game, every little intricate thing about it. It excites me. And then the only way I could get back in was to work for free again. My wife took a hell of a gamble on me. I asked her to give me 2 years, let me go work for free, and that meant free. Yeah, man. And then I got blessed. When the job came open, it was master's required. I had obtained my master's degree, so I threw my hat in the ring. The truth of the matter is this. I was told by a coach, even though I'm paying you nothing, you need to work like I'm paying you $1 million. And I took that to heart. And everything that I did, whatever coach asked of me, that was nothing. I did above and beyond that. I popped up on campus other places where they wouldn't expect me to pop up. I was in the enrollment office answering phones. I was out there handing out flyers. I was doing everything, to the point that not necessarily that I was going to get a head coaching job, but just I was going to get a job. It didn't matter. I wanted it to be so hard to be like, damn, we got to give this guy a job because we're going to look ridiculous to everybody else that we didn't give him one. To all the young black coaches out there, you got to be willing to work for free. All that stuff you see on TV and all the guys making that major money, that is not what it is. It's grunt work. It's being told to do crap you don't want to do. It's going through that thing, and I had to learn that the hard way. I would also say make sure you know who you're trying to work for. Making sure that you're working for somebody that is invested in you as a coach and moving you up and growing you and hey, I got this coach here. He's a great coach. The situation you have is better for him than what I can give him. You should give him an opportunity because of what he's done here. Those are the things that are really, really, really important. The X's and O's are the X's and O's. The truth of the matter is the first 6 years I was a voluntary assistant, they didn't ask my opinion on recruiting, basketball, or anything. They wanted to make sure guys were in class. They wanted to make sure guys were on the floor on time. That was my job. And I just made sure I tried to be perfect at it. And I made mistakes along the way. And, it was different. It was difficult. And you got to bet on yourself and you got to sit in the saddle because you're not going to make any money. That's just the God's honest truth. If you're not willing to do it for free, you're not willing to do it, in my opinion. And then, other people get blessed to do some things and other people get different routes and they know somebody that knows somebody and they got somebody that can pick a call. That wasn't my reality. But I had a great faith in God. I'm always going to bet on myself regardless of the circumstances. And that's what I did. And I'm very thankful that I was able to stick in there. A couple weeks ago, they said we weren't having the season. Took that to the chin and we're just going to keep moving. But at the end of the day, I've already worked making nothing. So going through this and having to start from scratch doesn't even bother me or scare me in the slightest. So that's what I would tell the guys. And I would just say, do everything you're asked to do times 10. And it doesn't just mean in the basketball office. If the AD needs help, you help him. Show up at baseball games and work the scoreboard. Help rake the field. Man, I was doing that. Like during conference softball tournaments, I was out there doing field maintenance. I just didn't want to be told no when it came to there being a potential job opening. And it just happened to be the head job that was there. And, I got blessed. So if you're really about it and you really want to go down that route, it's going to look something like that. And that's the God's honest truth. So my question for you, Coach Crass, I know that you've, come from the D1 level and, there's this willingness to have conversation now. And I had this hypothetical. If I had a son and I sent him to play, basketball for you, so to speak, what would that conversation look like from you about what's going on, although you look different from me? How are you going to start that conversation, and how are you going to get guys that are from different backgrounds than you, you know what I mean, to not only get them to understand that you're listening to them, but that you're aware of what's going on, and that that's going to be an open dialogue and that type of session. What would that look like for you?
Yeah, good question. It's my first time being a head coach, so I anticipate making a lot of mistakes on every single level. But the biggest thing that I've learned over the last couple of months through coming to these things and talking to friends of mine is that I need to listen. And I'm going to have, because of the pandemic, I'm going to have 30 young men who I've never met in person. It's all been phone conversations, Zoom, whatever. And, I'm going to have an opportunity to learn from a lot of people from all over the country. And, I think that what I need to do and what I anticipate doing in my first couple of weeks is just letting them know that I want to listen and I want to learn, and letting them talk. And then, what I hope happens, I can't guarantee that this is how it'll go, but what I hope happens is that some guys open up and, that we can learn from them. And then I hope that one of them takes some leadership and what they want from me as a head coach, and what they want from my assistants, and how we can help. I have a lot of ideas from coming to these things that I want to do that we've talked about and we've heard about tonight. And, everything from voting to stuff with law enforcement. Specifically, one thing I'm excited about at Otero Junior College, they have a law enforcement academy. So it's guys, I don't really know how old they are yet. I think they're probably fresh out of college or maybe younger. But they have about 60 people that are training to become law enforcement. So I have a chance to use my players to kind of attack it at the heart, to attack it early. And hopefully we can make a change with those law enforcement. They can see, for one, that, my guys are normal people just like everybody else. And hopefully we can do enough that they start to love my guys a little bit, and my guys start to love them. And it can go both ways. But I hope that, I hope that somebody on our team will kind of take some leadership and help me, because like it said all the time, I have no idea what it's like to be black. I don't try to act like I do. I have a lot of friends and close people that I consider family that are black, and I hurt for them, and I feel for them, and I've seen it, and I've been in the car when it's happened, but it didn't happen to me, and I don't all the way understand it, and I won't ever. But what I do understand is that I'm in a position of power, and I can make a difference by letting them talk and letting them teach me and teach each other. Because I'm out of the 30, not all of them are going to be black. Some of them are going to be Hispanic. Some of them are going to be white. And they have a chance right then at an early age where they still can, like we were talking earlier about the people that are set in their ways and not changing. I don't think there's very many 18-year-olds that have no room for growth and no room for change. And, hopefully, we've all seen the great movie, Remember the Titans and stuff. I just think sports have such a great place in our community to make a difference. Like you go all the way back to when, desegregation first began. Like sports was the beginning of it all, with what's now UTEP in Western Texas. Like sports we have such a strong way to do it. And we can change so many people's lives just by understanding diversity and love for each other. I think love is a big word that I'll use in my program, and I want my players to understand. And you asked, when you sent the question, you asked, would I be uncomfortable with these conversations? And I don't think I will be. Yes, there'll be times that I'll be lost and I won't know what to say, but I think I'll be comfortable with them because I know my heart, I know me as a person, I know what I'm trying to do, and I know my intentions. So I don't think I'll be uncomfortable. I think that there'll be times that I'll mess up, I'll do it wrong, and I might piss somebody off when I'm trying, because a lot of this is new to me. Just not only, I've never been a leader of this capacity, but I know my heart, I know I'll do my best at it. So I don't think I'll be uncomfortable, but I know what I need to do, and that's to love on these boys and for them to understand that I'm here for them and that they'll open up with me, and hopefully they'll be the voice. And if that works out that way, I think we'll get a lot done. I appreciate it.
No, that's awesome, man. Can I touch on something real quick, Burton? I saw, Coach Lowe, I saw what he put. He said, is it always good to encourage people to work? There's nothing encouraging about working for free. but sometimes that's the only way. Sometimes it's the only way, and at my juncture, it was the only way, and and I thought it was tough, but no, Coach Crass, thanks for everything, man. I think that I think that's powerful, and I think that like all coaches, everybody's going to be in a little bit different position this year for sure.
Yeah, great stuff. Both sides, man. Great stuff. Let's go, Jabari and Pete. Let's go, you guys next.
Coach Pete, what does Black Lives Matter mean to you, and in what ways can whites use their privilege to make a difference?
Well, as other people have said, Black lives have not historically mattered in America from not our inception, but 150 years before our inception. And it was frustrating to me I touched on this earlier, but at this point, if you're misinformed as a white person, it's at least to a certain extent on purpose. And white people tend to get the benefit of the doubt in the US, whereas like Black Lives Matter was presumed to mean only Black Lives Matter or Black Lives Matter more. Yet another example on a long list of situations where Black people don't get the benefit of the doubt. There's no reason for white people not to say, oh, I bet that means Black Lives Matter also, or Black Lives Matter too, or why don't Black Lives Matter? But instead we got defensive based on generational brainwashing, at least generational racism, and we got extremely sensitive about it. And the nice thing is that, and like what's easier than an American white man to feel hopeful? I have seen a lot of things though in the last couple of months that have been unusual. Hundreds of police chiefs putting out statements. I never saw that before. And so today, it's probably in the 30% range of white people who are pissed off about the phrase Black Lives Matter. Whereas 3 months ago, it was probably more like 50%. And so I really hope that the thing I want more than anything else, because in the 60s, Dr. King spoke about how most of the white allies of that era, they were on board because they were outraged about the treatment of Black people, not because they were committed to the long-term equal opportunity for Black people. And these, of course, are different topics. And I hope we don't do the same thing again. I really hope that this time, because in 64 and 65, we passed Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act, and the vast majority of American white people were like, we did it. We did it. And now we can move on with our lives. And they jumped right back into what King called the white moderate zone, where they were no longer committed. So this time, I hope we're going to get some congressional resolution. They're going to pass something related specifically to police brutality. And my great hope is that this time, the white people who are on board with reform don't over-congratulate ourselves once we get a small sliver of reform that's one step forward. And what was your second question again?
What can whites do to use their privilege, the white privilege that we spoke on, to make a difference?
Well, I touched on this earlier as well to a certain extent. White people need to listen to Black people and speak to white people. And someone else said earlier that oftentimes it's easier. So like if a Black person tries to engage with a white racist, anything the Black person says could be misconstrued as an excuse. Oh, y'all are the culture of victimhood and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Like all of that whole narrative. Whereas when a white person confronts a white racist, well, it's very hard for them to look at us and say, oh, you're buying into a culture of victimhood and and where are all the Black fathers and like and all of that type of stuff. And so it's super important for us as white people, an element of privilege is we can engage other white people without being sort of universally shot down based on pre-existing racist narratives.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Your
Pete,
turn.
your turn, Pete. Sorry. You asked Jabari that question that you had. Sorry.
So, I hear like it's so common for, you could almost say that like the three things that white people cling to, white racists in particular, although Yusuf mentioned earlier, and I agree, that all American white people are racist to some extent. There's just a scale in play, right? You don't need to be a cross burner in order to be a racist. And I consider myself to be a racist, I might add. There's just a 1 to 10 scale like any other human attribute, right? Like just because you're not Hitler doesn't mean you're not a racist. So I hope that we as white people quit engaging in self-issued comparative clemency, where we imagine that we're not a racist because someone else is more racist. But some of the things I hear most commonly are, slavery's a long time ago, I never enslaved anyone, and it's time to get over it. And when you hear those types of things from white people, asking you to get over it, I'm curious how you respond and how you feel.
Well, my response to getting over it, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, anybody that's saying that at this point is pretty much being deliberate with it. So I would say they need to be educated. I would direct them to, powerful documentaries done by Ava DuVernay, such as 13th, the documentary 13th, that talks about, how we're still, slavery has been abolished except for when you're in prison. And mass incarceration has been one of those major things in the Black community that, has been disproportionate. And so, you look at 13th, When They See Us, I Am Not Your Negro. These are some of the movies that Blacks, whites, everybody needs to educate themselves on, because it gives you a greater understanding of what we're dealing with. We're not, yes, slavery ended. Then we had to deal with Jim Crow. Jim Crow ended, and we're still fighting for some of the same equality today in 2020 that we were fighting back then. So, my response is get educated.
And just to piggyback on that for 1 second, to give everybody listening one stat to consider. In 2011, Bank of America was fined $335 million, a record fine, for flagrant systemic discrimination against Black people. We're talking about identically, mathematically, equally qualified Black bars being offered either higher rates, less money, or being outright rejected. And so to any of you white people out there that hear that it was a long time ago, bullshit, 2011 is not a fucking long time ago. And this isn't just about police brutality. It's about banking, education, housing, employment. There's not a facet that doesn't touch. And it's not a long time ago. And we've made some progress, but since when is progress the main focus? We're all coaches. So if we're making progress, we're up 10 points the second quarter, are we like, we did it? Well, of course not. Right? We have not reached the top of Justice Mountain, not even close. And so it was not a long time ago, and progress isn't the point.
Wow.
Awesome, man. Awesome on both sides. Pete, if you don't mind sharing your book too, if you haven't already shared a link or some kind of way to get more information on that, please put that in the chat. Pete has a pretty powerful book that's worth checking out. We'll go to Aaron Smith and Marlon Lowe next, and then last we'll go with Brandon Goebel and Jim Hicks, and then we'll have closing thoughts.
You or me, Marlon?
Go ahead, Aaron. Go ahead.
Okay. So to my question to Lowe is, with the recent rise in the awareness of just the realities of, all of this systemic injustice, as we've said earlier, I also see a rise in genuine interest, from whites who had previously pushed these issues aside. So my question would be, what do you really want to communicate to the well-intentioned people who now are finally wanting to listen and to help?
Lowe, you're on mute.
There it is.
All right.
My response to that, to my communication with them would be like, know that it's not just us, but at the same time, I am an advocate of looking at myself and my group first and seeing what we can do to collectively build ourselves. But at the same time, I would need you all as an ally to understand that I need you to, like what we've constantly talked about today, I need you to talk to your friends in your group in order to help them to understand whatever changes need to be done. I can't go to your group or to a certain group and they're going to listen to me. I'm basically an outsider to them. But when you go to your own group, it's a whole lot easier for you to be internally, to be able to change, work within, to be able to get everybody to understand the concepts about what needs to happen and what needs to change. So that would be my communication as far as trying to see as far as how to help and what you can do is basically and basically to have a listening ear, but for more than anything is to be able to understand, to see that there's an issue, and it's all about pretty much throughout what I've understood, I've listened to for the most part of our conversation tonight. It's about opportunity. It's about extending and giving people opportunity to allow themselves to be able to provide as well. So that's what I would say. It's just give us a chance. But again, like I said, I'm an advocate, and I'm one of the, for my group, for Blacks, I'm harder on probably us than most people are, because I'm about self. So I don't just blame other people more than I say, you ain't doing nothing. You're not doing anything yourself, but let's talk about it. So I don't just point the finger at anybody else, more so as I continue to put the blame on ourselves as far as doing more and working together more. Yeah. If that answers. Am I muted? Oh, Aaron's muted.
Nah, Aaron's muted. You're good. Your question.
Absolutely. Answer the question. My fault.
Oh no, you good. You good. My question is, you benefit. Well, my comment in the question is, this is like, you benefit from white privilege, and knowing that you have white privilege, and knowing that your white privilege does not extend to your Black spouse. What are you doing to allow your white privilege to extend to your Black spouse?
Yeah, it's a great question, as usual. You follow Lo on Twitter, he doesn't pull any punches, so I appreciate that. But if my wife and children are not white, in the purest extent, I can't extend white privilege to them. But however, like I can use my privilege, and platform to pursue the equality and the equity, for everyone, that we're talking about. And hopefully, obviously in that, my wife and children, would benefit. I think it's important, for us as white men to really view the privilege that we have as a responsibility, and a responsibility to speak out, of these realities of injustice that, that are faced by people that don't have our privilege. I think in a lot of these conversations, sometimes the vastness of it all can be overwhelming. When we look at them, look at these things nationally or even globally. But some of the things that have already been said, most of these issues are far more important for us to tackle locally than they are nationally and globally. Especially police brutality. I think as a white man with a Black son, the issue of police brutality is like really important to me. The first time when he was 16 years old, that I as a white man had never had to think about, hey, if you do get pulled over, like this is what you need to do. And so I think that issue for me is really important. So kind of to answer your question as far as like what will I do, or what can I do, I believe like in the past, and I also want to continue to try to use my privilege to really bridge the gap locally between young Black men and law enforcement. Like some of the coaches have already said, I always try to set up conversations with our players, with campus police chief, security guards, local police department. Even have one of my best friends who was a teammate of mine at Prairie View. He's a police officer in one of the toughest neighborhoods in the nation, in California. And, we already have conversations set up to where, he can kind of share his perspective, one, as a police officer, but, also two, as a Black man. And I know that he, wants to listen and to help, my players feel and be heard, and that's what's just so important. And in all of this, I guess, with my privilege and this issue in particular, like just really wanting, our local police to see my Black players not as basketball players, not as anything other than as men, and having those conversations with them, also wanting my players and my son to see, them as men and women, and that's just one way in particular that I really, want to use that privilege and with it, hopefully pursue, equality, pursue equity, that my non-white, family members would benefit from. So I hope that, answers your question.
No, that's good. That helps. I appreciate that. It gives me some more insight to look at, things to look at. So I'm all right.
He's not an easy one to give insight to either. So we knew Aaron Smith was gonna bring the fire, man. Fire emojis. Let's go with our last conversation. Hicks and Goebel. Out of respect to you both, I put you last, so I hope you can appreciate that. So you guys are ending the night in the conversation section, so you get a little bit of extended time, but not too much. Then we're gonna have closing thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up.
You want me to go ahead first?
I'll start it off and give it to you first.
All right.
In the recruitment of a student athlete, what are some of the cultural differences that you have learned and grown to truly understand about Black as well as white families? Like, in other words, share some things that you really didn't know before getting into this business.
So, I read your question a lot. Like, I just kind of kept reading it over and over and over again, trying to really wrap my head around specific things, right? Because for me, like, my background, for those that don't know, like, I'm an Air Force brat. I grew up in places like England and Southern California, out at Vandenberg Air Force Base. And so, and then Colorado and Colorado Springs. Like, my life growing up was not very culturally diverse. It just wasn't, whether we were living on base, off base. I was usually around white people. And so, even going to Colorado State in Fort Collins, same thing. And basketball is really where my cultural diversity really took off. And so as I was trying to think about, like, what specific things, I honestly could not really put a finger on what exactly it is. But what I really kind of started thinking about was, I enjoy that aspect of meeting people from a very different background than me, meeting people that have incredibly colorful cultural differences from myself, probably more than anything else that I do. Like, the basketball part of it is cool, but as I started thinking about it, like Cole had a player this year, Raquandis Mitchell, and I spent a lot of time on the phone with Ray this year, and Ray and I's backgrounds are so drastically different. And there's plenty of things that kid does that drives me crazy, but I loved talking to him. I loved getting to know him and about his family and about his life experiences and things like that. And it has such like a drastic impact on my life that I honestly can't like culturally, I can't just pick something and say that this is something that I didn't know, because there's so many things I didn't know. There's so many things that I have now come to appreciate about the cultural differences. I mean, that's what makes this job so dope, is like, you get to now experience all of these cool things that I've just never been around, been a part of, had in my own experience, anything like that before. And I can absolutely tell you with 1,000% certainty that my life is way more fulfilled because of that exposure to those cultural differences, and how much I appreciate those relationships. And I appreciate those phone calls with Ray where we get to talk about things that are not common in my life. And so, you know, I know that sounds like a cop out, but I'm really not trying to. I'm trying. It's an incredibly powerful, moving thing in my life that I recognize those cultural differences and think, man, that's like one of the favorite parts of my day, is getting to be a part of that. Let me grab my question for you here. I hope that kind of answered it. It was, yeah. That was a hard question for sure, because it was, you know, it wasn't a specific thing that really spoke to me. It was more just the amount of differences and how appreciative of those I am and how much I embrace them. So, all right. So what kind of advice should we be giving to players in regards to choosing schools where coaches are thinking more about who that player is rather than just what that player is?
Well, advice. Okay. Well, first of all, in life, pretty much every decision that we make will be described or defined in one way or another, simply as choices and consequences. For most folks who are fortunate enough to successfully navigate their way through the muddy waters of D1 recruiting or any type of recruiting, they'll come to a fork in the road, whereas either you creatively find a way to use basketball to your advantage, or it will most certainly use you, right? So more advice, like that's some tidbits right there. More advice to young Black players and parents and guardians of you watching is the biggest mistake I think one can make is to attempt to draw lines right about now amongst Black and white. Reason is because there's no guarantee that a Black coach is going to value or care about you more than a white coach will. And if you want to be lied to, then I can guarantee you it will happen several times during the recruiting process. See, many kids come from backgrounds or communities where everyone looks just like them. Some of those Black kids had a Black middle school coach, Black grassroots coach, a Black high school coach, and now for the first time in their life, a white head coach. Do your homework and accumulate enough really intriguing questions to keep that coach thinking. Does the coach listen or respond, or listen to understand? That understanding stuff is really, really important. I talked about it last time, a few moments back. Okay, if you try to figure out as much intel about that head coach as possible, because that head coach, that person, he's likely to be the person who directly determines your fate, including your minutes per game, which is the most important statistic of an incoming prospect. Whenever you're around that coach, use your sixth sense, your mind's eye. Pay close attention to how that coach interacts with his Black assistants versus how he interacts with the white assistants. We'll also watch how they interact with each other. And that's the part about paying attention. And one of the most important things is, and I got this from years ago from George Ramble. And this was back in, I think, 2004, 2005 at a workshop that I held in Houston. He said, so basically I'll paraphrase it. You go the extra mile and you locate and contact at least 2 previous players who did not start under this current coach. Maybe even like the last scholarship player, they got at the end of the bench. And that means you're going off the beaten path. You talk to that person. You ask questions about the coach and get intel about the coaching staff from that person. And if they still have great things to say about the coach, he may very well be a great person. And those are intel that I have for young Black players in regard to choosing the colleges and the coaches that value, as you ask other people. That'll get you, that won't solve it, but that will help so many people from getting TKO'd in this stuff, because many of the coaches are seasoned professionals. They are pros at what they do. Most parents and these kids, if they lucky as hell, they get to go through it one time in their life. And you're talking about a novice going against a professional. It ain't no comparison. And in so many parents and so many kids in today's society and culture, they beg you to lie to them. So it's almost like you damn feel like you got to. They want to be lied to. You know it, so you feel like you're giving them their fix.
Yep.
At it. But you don't have to be their dealer. You don't have to. That's all I got to say on that.
No, that was big time. Big time. Great job by everyone on the paired conversation. Those are not easy. Really great job, man. Impressive work by everyone. I want to give the mic real quick before we go. So to end, we'll go 60 to 90 seconds on just something you think that we can do immediately for change, whatever that may be. So be thinking of that. In the meantime, I'm going to let a longtime friend, former head coach at St. Edwards, won championships, then got a Division I job at UT Pan American, and now is an NAIA coach in Chicago, Ryan Marks. He has a question he's texted. He stayed on the whole time. He wanted to ask, so I'll let him have the floor.
Hey guys, I know it's late, so I'll ask this quickly, but I think it's an important question, and whoever guys want to answer, I think would be terrific. And it comes a little bit too from what Marlon was saying about the importance, particularly for white coaches, to reach out to their circles. And in a lot of cases for us, our circles are on our campus. We have ADs, professors, tutors who need to be educated. And something that is a difficult issue now, particularly in Chicago, has to do with black on black gun violence and how it impedes, in some cases, my ability to try to articulate or educate people. Now, I think something that Pete would do, and if sometimes when I'm trying to do that, if people are patient enough to listen, I can start with, and I know, like, for example, Jabari mentioned 13th, which is fantastic, and I hope everybody has seen or will see. But, you look at Chicago, we have the most prevalent problems of all, right? And it starts with the war, from where we were, it starts with things like the war on drugs and mass incarceration, the relocation of people in housing projects because of, changes in the city and gentrification. And, it sort of ultimately it leads us where we are. There was even among organized crime and gangs, there was a hierarchy in Chicago at one time. If you played at King, or you played at Simeon, or you played at Curie, and you were a great player, those gangs and those older guys who ran the hierarchy of the drug business, they pushed those kids away. They'd say, hey, don't let me see you on this corner.
And by the way, here's the pair of shoes. And then they'd go and those were the guys who were also betting a lot on the high school games in Chicago. So nevertheless, we have all this stuff that's created a terrible violence problem among gangs. It's worse here than anywhere else. And so some people will listen to the history of that, but some people won't. So how do I, as a white coach, when people come back and say, Coach, I hear you about the Black Lives Matter, and I try to focus them specifically on police violence, how do I respond to them saying, yeah, but look at our Black community and what's going on and what they're doing to each other?
Big time question. Big time question. Go ahead, Marlon.
Yeah, I could try to take this talk on it. First of all, I'm from 83rd and Cottage Grove on the south side. So I get it. I don't think that when people come in and they look at Chicago, I think one thing you said was about the housing projects. I kind of put it in a little conversation like this when I've talked about people, when they talk about black on black crime in Chicago, this and that. Say, listen, you take a group from the west side, you take a group from the south side. Or matter of fact, and then what you do is you shrink all of their resources down. You shrink you take away their housing and communities, and you put them in a smaller circle when they used to be on two different sides of town. You put them in a smaller circle, blocks apart from each other. Well, one time they would never see each other, maybe once a year. So now they see each other once every other day because they don't have the room to expand like they used to expand because they're selling gentrification and everything else. So now when you have no resources, you have no jobs, you have no opportunities to provide for yourself and to provide for your family. And when you feel like there's no hope, the first thing you do, whether you're white, black, or any color, if you're going to hurt somebody, you hurt those that are closest to you right now. So that's what they do. They put everyone in these circles, and it's by design. It's by design, and they don't have any opportunity there. And when you struggle and you fight, it's the first thing you're going to do is you're going to harm those closest to you because it's no way out. And for people that don't know, Ryan, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you haven't been to Chicago, Chicago's one of the most segregated cities in the country. And, it's getting better now, but they're moving people. Now they're moving people out. They've taken gentrification and moving them into the 60s, 61st, 62nd, 63rd. And now they're pushing the same group into a tighter circle. So if those people many of those guys and women have never left their neighborhoods. And it's crazy to think that, but that's just something to think about when they start talking about the crime rate. And it's one of the most political cities in the country. You start talking about crime and white collar crime, it's incredible. So that's one of the things I could start out with and just comes to my mind off the top for what it is. But feel free, someone else or Ryan, to continue to elaborate. But
I would love to jump in briefly.
We'll go Pete, and then we'll go closing thoughts.
So Ryan, when I get that question, the first thing I point out is that violent crime, broken down by race, for both white people and black people, it's intraracial between 80 and 90% of the time. And so my first question is, why aren't you worried about white on white crime? And then my second question is, because the context always is after a police officer murders an unarmed black person, then out comes every white racist in the world. What about black on black crime? They don't really care about that except for in that context. And I point that out as well. Well, were you worried about that on last Tuesday, or are you suddenly only worried about that now? So those are generally the two rebuttals I go with on that particular topic.
Yeah.
Good stuff, Pete.
Now I'll say this, and I'm sorry, Brian, close up. Even in Chicago, what I try to say, well, not even just Chicago, but it's like, look, kind of what Pete said. Listen, Let's not start talking about this. Like, I'm a guy that gets upset when they sit back and say, well, Black Lives Matter. Well, what about black on black crime? You know what I say? You're damn right. You're right. I don't just want to talk about it when a police officer murders a black person, a black man. Why aren't black people talking about it amongst themselves on how we can continue to correct and fix this problem in our own neighborhoods? And why do we always need an outside source to come in and tell us how we should be dealing with each other? We need to learn how to fix this ourselves. So there's no white on or black or less crime. But hell, in China, guess who's killing each other? Chinese are killing each other. I mean, look at these wars. So it's like World War I, but that was white on white crime. World War II. So, if everybody's going to, in their own demographic, are going to hurt each other. But collectively, when I look at black people, it's like, look, we have to work harder with each other to correct the issues that we deal with on a day-to-day basis.
And I'll add this one little part to it, Coach Marks, not to get so much into the black on black. I think everybody's touched on that, but I think the part that's so disturbing about the police when it comes to police brutality and black people is police's job is supposed to be to protect and serve. So it's like you're looking at people that are supposed to be the people on our side to help us from harm. But for us, it's looked at as like this is maybe more of just another weight, another burden of another mental place that you have to feel like, how do I protect myself from this? Because you can't call the police on the police, right? So who are you supposed to call? So that it makes a whole lot of other issues when the place you're supposed to go for safety and security, you don't feel like you have that place. So I just wanted to add that little part. Let's do this. Let's go final thoughts.
Wait, just real quick.
Go ahead, Pete.
If you see the link I shared just now, and anybody else, if you encounter this bullshit online, I tend to share that link and say, I'm happy you're so concerned about the violence in Chicago. Here's a link with 25 nonprofits that are doing great work to end it. So you should go ahead and donate. So the link I shared, the last link I shared is a link to a bunch of reputable groups that are doing great work to try to stop the violence in Chicago. And I encourage people to put their money where their mouth is, which of course they don't want to do because they're deflecting. They're not being earnest to begin with. So.
And I hope from this phone call and this Zoom call, we'll all stay more connected. Hopefully some new relationships with forwards and all those things from what's happened. But I will say this, Pete is in a place where he's written a book. He's dove into this topic at a different level than most. So as college coaches, as leaders, definitely a resource to reach out to. Not saying it's the end all be all, but I do think Pete has a lot of powerful investment that he's taken into this topic. So that being said, let's just do 60 to 90 seconds on something that we can individually do or collectively do for change with this topic right away. So we'll start with whoever wants to go first. I'll let you go first.
Let me go first. I got my wife been tapping on me.
You got it.
All right. So first, thank you all again. I'm just going to go over some things real quick in my head because I took a couple notes and I'm going to sum it up real quick and I'm going to be jumping all over, but just things that's in my head. On social media, on Twitter, tomorrow I hit it tonight. Just y'all hear me saying hashtag Black Ice. No, it's nothing crazy. I'm telling black people you need to learn how to love yourselves. Okay, so it's nothing against anybody else. You see hashtag Black Ice, I'm telling them. Stop thinking that white people's ice is cold is more cold than yours. Okay, learn how to love yourself. Stop trying to think that you have to have access to white people in order to have success. Okay, and that's some of the things that Hicks was talking about earlier with like even the coaches. So I'm all for everybody working together, but I'm also for I'm okay with a white person loving himself, taking care of himself, going home to his family. I want y'all to be okay with me loving myself, taking care of myself, going home to my family, and we can work together. We can share resources. We can enjoy each other's time and company. And when it's time to go, I'm hoping you get there safely. I want you to hope that I get there safely. And when we continue to get back to continue to work together and grow again, that's our purpose. So I'm going to do what I can to make sure that you're good. I hope that you would do what you can to make sure that I'm good. I'm in a position right now where I need a little bit more help. And some of the people that you know might have resources. When I say I mean collectively my group, okay, my circle. But at the same time, I still put it on my circle to make sure that we do our part, so that if an opportunity becomes available from you and your circle or your group, that we're prepared to accept it. So again, I appreciate the time. I'm still going to be listening in. I just got to take care of some things she wants me to take care of.
Yeah, that's important. We want to keep you married, just like you just said.
You know what I'm saying? Thank you.
Cole Dewey, go next, please.
Real quick. I mean, I'll be short, man. I just continue to talk to our guys. You know, I almost commented when somebody asked a question earlier. Talk to them, not just sitting behind your desk in the office. You know, talk to them in a normal setting, because that can be, you know, somewhat. They feel a different way sometimes. You know, whenever you take them off campus, take them for a ride. Talk to them walking around campus. Talk to them sitting up in the stands watching some other guys work out. Because you'll be amazed at, you know, how much they'll open up when it's not just a setting where they're sitting behind a desk and they feel intimidated sometimes. Talk to them like a real person, get to know them, and just love them.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Coach Stafford. You got to hit on mute real quick.
Hello?
Yep.
All right. Biggest thing for me, man, and Aaron kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. I'm a Christian, and I incorporate God in my faith and my walk with my players, and I try to encourage them to do the same thing, because at the end of the day, we're not going to be making changes overnight, but I just believe if you can completely believe in God and trust in God and what he's going to do, you can get your players in some kind of mindset like that. I think that can help them get through. Like, one of the things that I learned in my walk is a lot of times as we're going through things, we want to ask God to take us out of it or remove it. And what I've learned is you need to ask him to help you get through it, because actually he's putting you in that situation so that you can be able to help somebody else down the road. And so the thing that I want my players to see is see me going through things, or see me deal with things, deal with it appropriately, so I can kind of help them. And the bottom line is, if you don't have any tests, you have no testimony. You have nothing that you can help other people out with. So I'm big on my faith. I'm big on trying to encourage my players to do the same thing. And hopefully that's encouraging to somebody else out there today. And hopefully that can be encouraging to your players as well.
Awesome. Love that. Hank, will you go next, please?
Yep. Obviously, really enjoyed hearing everybody, and there's a lot to, you know, I was thinking about kind of going into this. You think about what to say after hearing everybody. I've been thinking about what everybody else has said, and I've really enjoyed it. Some stuff I've thought about, some stuff I haven't. I guess just a thought here moving forward, especially for a lot of us as junior college coaches, and even college coaches that haven't been with their guys for 4 or 5 months. I think the biggest thing is we do need to, you know, consider what they've been through the last few months with everything. We need to, you know, at our level, we have guys that I've hardly met before, you know, hardly seen face to face. And I think that kind of these first 1, 2, 3 months, and a lot of us probably aren't going to be playing until January, or it's going to be a while. But I think if when players step onto campus this fall in a month or so, or whatever it is, I mean, if it's business as usual, here's what we're doing basketball-wise today, I think you're going to be in for a really long year. So I think all the stuff we're talking about is always relevant. I think it's never going to be any more relevant than right now, especially since there's so much unknown. And honestly, I'm you know, one thing that you take from this, but also moving, you know, just kind of been thinking about is I can't wait to hear what our guys are thinking about everything. And that's going to really adjust what I think the next 4 months is like, and the conversations we have, and how we go about basketball, and how we go about life, and how we go, and how to, I think as Mr. Hicks says, make sure they can use basketball and they're not letting basketball use them.
Big time, Hank. Aaron, will you go next?
Yep. You know, I think the most important, you know, characteristic to have in these conversations is empathy. You know, empathy is not feeling for someone; it's feeling with someone. You know, for, you know, a real world example, you know, when we see
George Floyd, face down on the pavement with a knee on his neck, and we simply call it, and believe it to be evil, terrible, and heinous, we still haven't reached the level of empathy. I think empathy comes when we really push ourselves, to not see George Floyd on the pavement, but our own sons or our own selves. And as white men, we must, we have to push ourselves to that. Our black friends don't have to. That's already what they see. And so I think that's very, very important to empathize in these conversations.
Yeah, it's powerful, Coach. Really powerful. Wade, will you go next?
You're on mute.
I think you're muted.
My fault. Yeah, I'm really just blessed to, come together with a lot of guys, you know what I mean, in the profession and everything that have kids' interests, and the future's interest at heart. I think that's really, really important. It's always good and always a learning tool for me just to hear everybody's perspective and things like that. And I think that, I hear it a lot, but as a coach and as a person and as really a teacher, which is what I am, as long as I can continue to learn and have these conversations and try to take what I'm feeling and making sure that understanding that through different lenses, people are feeling a different way and trying to come to that commonality and that understanding. I think that, I can help leave a place a little bit better than I found it. So I really, really appreciate just everything about what's been going on.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Coach. Coach Krass, have you gone yet?
No, I don't know. We've been here for a little while. I don't think there's anything that I can think of that we could do that hadn't been said. But I graduated high school at Little Rock Central in 2008. We were the 50th class from desegregation, and I remember sitting there and Obama came and Oprah and Chris Bosh was really big in that stuff, and they came and they spoke, and I remember thinking damn, it's only been 50 years since y'all were allowed to go to school with us at all in the South. And we got a long way to go, and everything that we're thinking of right now, and we do hopefully we accomplish it, but then more shit's gonna come up, and that's what I just hope we don't stop, and we keep learning and we keep growing, because here in 15 years there's gonna be some new problems, and us younger guys, we need to keep it and never settle, and progress ain't the answer, like Pete shared earlier. But I think that's all I can really say is hopefully we continue to learn, and then we do our best to implement all the things that we've said, but just keep going, don't stop.
Yep, great job, Ted. Great job. Coach Parks?
Yeah, I'm really thankful to be invited to talk with some of you guys and learn. There's a lot of things that I didn't even think about, like some of you guys have said. We've talked a lot about conversations and relationships, and for those that have had those conversations with teams, you could ask a question and there could be crickets for however long. So incorporating moderators in those conversations. If you're a white coach, maybe it's an African-American faculty member. But on top of that, if you want your student athletes to really open up with you, especially in kind of a realm that as a white male you can't relate to, be vulnerable. Everyone in this room has made a mistake in their life. Everyone has gone through something, regardless of if it's been something to do with race or not. And sometimes as coaches, we do all the disciplining and we have this persona that we're perfect. And I think it's really important to admit our imperfections and to let these guys know that we ask for help when we need it, and that it is a sign of strength. And so I think just being vulnerable puts you on the same page, and I like what Coach Dewey was saying in terms of having those conversations in other platforms and kind of being on a level. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand, is being vulnerable and opening up yourself will make it a lot easier for those student athletes to open up so you can better assist them.
Yeah, big time, Tom. Thanks, man. Thanks a lot. Coach Youssef.
Yeah, B, appreciate it, man. Sorry, guys, about the screen being off, man. I had to get in bed with the wife too, so I'm still on. I'm working from the house. I think, man, for first of all, this is great. I think what has to happen is these conversations have to continue to happen amongst the mass that we have in our platforms. All of us have an opportunity to share a lot of things across multiple venues and I call them vessels because it could carry. I'm sharing a message right now that I just put in the group chat for everybody. I went to a black boarding school, which is one of the only black boarding schools still in existence in the U.S. We've been open since 1909, and it has a very, very rich culture, a very, very interesting story from the beginning to now. It saved my life. I'm a kid that comes from the systemic situation my dad was on, was a substance abuse, and it still is. So I can see how things can go either way. My mom was one of the people that, pulled her pants up and she made it good for all of us, myself and my 3 sisters. So I got both sides. I was able to see the wrong way and the right way. And part of my message comes from this school because she sent me to it. And it gave me also those same foundations and values and morals that you need, man, to succeed in life. And if everybody could just take a look at the school, man, just look up the Wikipedia. I sent the links. Just take whatever you can get, resources, people you know, get the message out. If we can use this place, man, to bring about change, I think it starts at that level, at that grassroots, 8th grade through 12th grade. I think those are those formative years. You get them at 14 years old when they're starting to, make decisions of going with the gangs in Chicago or not down here in Mississippi. So if anybody, wants any more information, give me a call. I put my cell in there. I'm all over social media. I'll share my links and everything. So, Brian, I appreciate you, man. Thank you, guys. This was awesome. I'd love to do another one if we can, baby.
Yeah, thanks, Yusef. Great stuff, man. You were awesome tonight. Coach G.
I'm on mute. First of all, man, I'd like to thank you for being a part of this. Very informative. I think we got to keep on having informative, uncomfortable conversations to be able to understand each other and to be able to share that with our next generation to make sure that they keep on. We don't let this die. We keep on improving our lives and keep on improving those around us, and tell them how they can influence what's going on around here. I want to speak a little bit earlier about when we were talking about Chicago and the violence, but I just think about Dallas, and I look and you want to go to the liquor store, you got to go to South Dallas. Well, that's where all the black people live at. That's where it's a liquor store on every corner in West Dallas, South Dallas. You don't see that in Highland Park. But I'm not going to speak too much on that. But that's just some of the things I think that we educate them to vote, and and get the right people in office where they take some of that stuff away from us. Where those are tempting things for us to do bad things, and let's educate them to vote and make changes, man. Make changes. We got to continue to do this and don't let it die. That's it. I appreciate y'all letting me be a part.
Yep, great job, man. Yeah, they actually touched on that way back in the day. Most of us on this Zoom have seen Boys in the Hood. He was talking about that way back then. It's a liquor store in every corner. It just makes it harder for us to make it out, because at the same time we're limited in resources, limited in opportunities, and you have this stuff right at your fingertips, and then that's how you get even more black on black crime. And not to get off subject, but just to touch on that a little bit. Let's go with Hicks next. All right, let's go Goble. Oh, there he is. Okay, my fault.
Yeah, there we go. Quickly, I think as we leave, a lot of the white coaches, it was good dialogue, and that's the thing. And I remember one of the things that Pete said that stuck is for white people to listen to black people and talk to white people. And I'm encouraging or attempting to encourage or challenge most of the white coaches to find some of your black allies, guys that you may deem friends, and get to dialogue with them, but not it has to be in an effort to actually find out something about that person that you did not know. Find out and understand. There's so much about each other that we don't understand. and we just take for granted. And for example, white people, you guys may not understand why black folk put so much bass in our music, when we're in our cars. Little bitty stuff like that, y'all just might just not understand. Instead of just a discount, man, they playing that racket. You ask us why the hell we put so much bass in our music. Ask us why we love shiny things, which you don't make it right, but just you can understand from some folks if you ask why we like shiny things. Ask us why do we hate it? Why does it appear that we black folk hate each other so much? But you can ask your allies that question. You can't dare walk up to the stranger on the street. No, your ally. This is the time when you can have that conversation with them. Hell, little bitty things like why we like hot sauce on our food. You guys, white people, may not understand that, and you think you know it, or you're gonna put the hot sauce. Watch, but you don't understand why. And you guys are not asking enough why to understand. Hell, why we don't like giving back? Ask us, then you'll understand why we don't like giving back. Hell, some black folk need to ask that amongst each other. Why we like eating or why we do or don't eat the end of the bread. Look at this stuff like that. Ask. That's all I'm in challenging and trying to encourage everybody to do. Take it, let's ask, and let's now try to understand. Once you understand, now you can be able to have that conversation with that white person as a white person and make him halfway understand. Not going to change his mind, but at least he'll understand.
Say, why we don't eat the ends of the bread? God damn.
Oh man!
Yeah.
All right, let's go, Brandon. Then we'll go Pete. Then I'll step in. Then we'll end with Adam.
We were talking. I think forget whose question it was. We were talking about percentage of coaches. Might have been Hank's, and I encourage everybody to take this time, especially this fall. We talk about wanting to get black coaches into coaching and head jobs and assistant jobs and all those things lead to each other and stuff. Make a list of 3 or 4 names of black coaches that you have a relationship with, that you work with, that you know them as people rather than just coaches as well. And take some time this fall to reach out to head coaches and just introduce them. And just say, hey, coach, somebody else that that is a friend of yours or you have a really strong relationship with. Hey, coach, I want to introduce you to 4 people that I don't think you know these 4 people. I want to introduce you. I want you to get to know them, ask questions if I can help you with anything, because the next time you got a job open, you're going to want to hire one of these guys. And because a lot of coaches say, well, I didn't hire so-and-so because I just didn't know them. So help them get to know them and be super intentional about it. I think that's an opportunity that we typically miss out on because we get so caught up in our lives, and some of us have more free time now than we've had in the past. So let's take advantage of that and get those names out to people that are going to be doing the hiring, so that the I don't know them isn't a thing anymore.
So in 2019, 9 unarmed black people were murdered by the police. That's down from over 100 in 2015. And so what you hear a lot of times is that white races in particular want to selectively point out stats. There's only 9. Well, one, it's still 28% higher proportionally than the number of unarmed white people who got killed. But 2, Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick caused a massive decrease in that number, because they collectively forced the media to pay attention consistently rather than arbitrarily. And so it's important to point out that both BLM and CAP have been effective, because you hear that a lot from white people. Oh, what's their goal? They haven't been effective. They're alienating more people than they're attracting, and so on and so forth. And then the other thing is, something I hear a lot is that, like I said, 9 unarmed black people got murdered by the cops in 2019. And so it's easy for a white person to say something that's actually statistically true, which is that more black people died being struck by lightning than by the police when they were unarmed in 2019. And so white people therefore want to say this is isolated. I hear that all the time. This is isolated. You have to culturally connect the nonviolent, unconstitutional police harassment. And I've had conversations with hundreds of adult Black men, and I've encountered 3 in my life, who have not at a minimum been unconstitutionally harassed by the police. That means they're walking down the street with a group of friends, minding their own business. Walking down the sidewalk, group of friends minding their own business. Cop rolls up, demands to see IDs. Suddenly people are sitting on the curb, zip tied, while the cop runs everybody's ID. Or they're in the wrong neighborhood, which basically means Black in a white neighborhood. Or they're in a smaller town, which is a majority white town. And they get pulled over just based on unjust race-based suspicion. And we have to connect the culture that permits the nonviolent, unconstitutional police harassment with the culture that permits the murders and the brutality. And once you connect these things culturally and view them collectively, which we must do because they're clearly connected, then the notion that these things are isolated become totally preposterous. I've done a lot of interviews with, the average number of Black college kids. We're talking about kids, children. Like the average number of Black college kids who've been at a minimum unconstitutionally, non-violently harassed by the police is well over 70% in my research over the course of the last 50 days. And so when you hear other white people say this is isolated, it's because they're not culturally connecting the constant harassment with the murder. And I say all the time that until Black rights matter, Black lives will never matter. And we must connect these two things. And so all you white people out there that are having these conversations, I hope that helps you have that conversation more persuasively.
Yeah, that was awesome. This whole night's been awesome. Really appreciate everybody taking the time out, putting it in a schedule, opening up, being vulnerable, taking some risks to just step out there. It's not an easy platform to be on to talk, but obviously all you guys really care about this topic. So really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. I know Adam feels the same, and I know everybody got something from it. I wrote down a few notes. I'll be quick. I'll start with I was on the Chop Shop 2 days ago with Jimmy Hicks, and they asked a question that I thought was a good question and a relevant question. And the question was almost those percentages that Coach Davis talked about, Big E. 32% at one point in time, now it's 13. And it was like, well, white coaches aren't going to be happy that Black coaches may get that percentage back up. But it's not a competition first and foremost. But when a job is open, let's say Garden City was open, right? Otero was open. It's anybody's job. It's not taking a job from a white coach per se, because the job is open. So they can hire whoever they want. So there's a understanding that it's not a competition. Everybody's in this together. We should all be able to win. As the kids say, we should all be able to eat. And you give, the more we give, the more we will receive. I think what Brandon talked about was powerful too, and somebody talked about it on the last roundtable, is just people hire who they're comfortable with. And a lot of presidents, ADs, administrators, even if they're not, there's not very much representation, meaning Black people, whether it be women or men, we have to do a better job of helping each other to get in those circles so that we can be more comfortable. Whether it's even like Brandon said, introducing coaches to head coaches, all those things, all that networking, all that expanding our circle to add more people in it is important. So I think that's something just to keep in mind, just expanding our circle so we can be more comfortable and having those conversations. A coach that was on Coach's Corner talked about they're doing some cultural projects, not just for Black and white and watching movies like 13th, but also they had one Serbian player on their team, but no one knew anything about Serbia. So they did some things to culturally help that kid feel like he can fit in more. So I think those are just things to keep in mind as well. And another coach brought this up, Chris Dorsey from Centenaire. He said a lot of young Black men are angry, kind of like Coach Youssef talked about. And they're not always going to open up even when you try to talk. And so part of how he suggested to get them to open up is you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. I think Coleman had said it earlier, I'll never know what it's like to be a black man. That alone helps that young man to feel comfortable because you don't know what stuff is built in him that makes him apprehensive, even though you're his coach. I think somebody may have touched on earlier, Hicks may have said it earlier, some of these young men have only played for black coaches, and now all of a sudden they're playing for a white coach for the first time, and they may not have that trust yet. They may not want to have that trust. So offering some vulnerability to these young men is important in order for them to be vulnerable. That was something somebody said I thought was powerful. I love what Aaron said. Everybody said great things all night. I'm just picking out a couple things. I love what Aaron said about until we see, meaning white people or non-black people, see George Floyd as themselves or their loved ones, it doesn't hit the same. It doesn't hit home the same. So, and you don't fight the same for the change. So I thought that was really big that he said that. Yeah, and just where your players getting their information. I think Adam Walsh touched on it earlier. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of people, as Ross Hodge talked about last time, trying to hijack the narrative. We have a chance with our players to control the narrative and educate within. So just like we would do at home with our kids, we have to do a great job of being intentional about how we're helping shape the minds of our young people. I think that's really important. And then the last two things I'll say is just, the history. I think there's so much history, unfortunately, that we're not taught in schools. We're not taught because I think Lowe may have been very direct about this earlier on the last roundtable. Who owns the news stations? Who wrote the textbooks? Who has formed the narrative that they wanted? And it's not fault of anyone on this call, but it's just a reality we have to face. White people probably wrote the textbooks. They own the radio station and the TV station. So they're controlling the narrative. So we have an opportunity now with all this information we have at our fingertips to be able to access to educate our players in a way and ourselves, myself included. I watched 13th not too long ago, and I was blown away. The stuff I didn't even know. So I think that's a really important part is just really getting to the history, because until we get to the root of how some of these things are the way they are, it's hard to really help people to work through it. And then the last one, my brother talked about this last time. Obviously, I'm biased towards him, but and I think people have talked about it tonight. But it's a hard issue more than anything, and we have to use love. We have to have compassion. We have to use love. We have to, obviously use tough love when we need it, when we're coaching, but we have to be able to understand how important love is. The most powerful weapon we're going to have to make change. So really appreciate it again. I'll let Adam have his closing thoughts. And yeah, man, let's just keep pushing forward, man.
Brian, thank you again for putting all this together and working tirelessly on everything that you've done with All Access, but specifically these two roundtables that you've put together. Appreciate everyone being involved and participating, either as a presenter or as an active listener. Yeah, I've said it before, I'll continue to say it. We're committed to continuing this conversation and making sure that we keep it in the forefront and don't let it fade away. So we'll continue to do things like this. We do have a series that Jenny Fisher is doing for us called Continuing the Conversation that you guys can check out on YouTube, which has been really, really good. And then we have some other things coming down the pike shortly that I'll be excited to tell you guys about more at a later date, but some more actionable items that's coming soon that I'm very, very excited about. So again, thanks everyone for being here. I know it was a long evening, but it was an important one and an impactful one. So thanks everybody.